Every country in the world is in debt. The United States alone currently owes over $38 trillion, the highest figure in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion, while Japan's debt stands at nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich nations like Saudi Arabia or export powerhouses like Germany and China owe amounts that can't be dismissed. But here's the paradox. If everyone is in debt, then who are we all indebted to? As a financial historian, I know one thing for certain. Money, power, and history always intersect. And nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Debt isn't just a burden, it's the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every rise and fall in the global economy has been built upon an invisible scaffolding of IOUs. And the further you trace this hierarchy of creditors into the past, the more unsettling the truth becomes. The world doesn't really owe anyone. It owes itself. But that doesn't mean everyone shares that debt equally. Today, the world is drowning in over $315 trillion of debt, roughly 3 times the size of the global economy. To understand how this began, we need to go back to the very start. Before credit cards and digital transfers, centuries ago, the idea of national debt was born. But it wasn't born on Wall Street. It was born in war. In 1694, England was at war with France, and the crown's gold reserves were empty. The king turned to the merchants for help. English merchants agreed to finance the crown, not out of charity, but in exchange for permanent interest payments, guaranteed by future taxes on the people. To manage this new arrangement, the Bank of England was created. It was a revolution. For the first time, a government could spend money it didn't yet have, and the lenders, in return, received something priceless, the word of the state. A promise that could be bought and sold. That promise became the seed of modern finance, the birth of the government bond. France copied it, the Dutch perfected it, and the newly founded United States adopted it to fund its own revolution and westward expansion. National debt was no longer a sign of failure. It became a measure of credibility. The power to borrow became the power to rule. Once empires conquered lands to gain gold. Now they issue bonds to earn interest. The battlefield had a new name, the balance sheet. The soldiers withdrew and the accountants marched in. Now fast forward 3 centuries. Debt has become the world's largest export. The U.S. owes $38 trillion. Japan over $9 trillion. Global debt grows by $1 trillion every 100 days. Every nation borrows, every bank lends, every individual, through savings, taxes, and pension funds, is both a debtor and a creditor. But who's holding the other end of the rope? We start with America, because the U.S. doesn't just have a national debt. It has the world's debt. About half of that $38 trillion is publicly held, meaning it's owed not to government agencies, but to investors. Roughly 2/3 of those investors are American banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining third, about $9 trillion, is held by foreigners. The biggest creditors are Japan, $1 trillion, China, $800 billion, followed by the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So yes, the claim that the U.S. owes China is true, but that debt is only 2% of America's total. In reality, America's biggest creditor is America itself. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. Sometimes the Fed buys those bonds back and creates new dollars. Americans pay taxes. The government pays interest on those bonds, and that interest flows right back into American pension funds. It's a mirror loop. The debts are enormous, but the creditors are mostly reflections of the same system. And this system isn't just American, it's global. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to Europe. Europe lends to developing nations, and they in turn invest their reserves in Western bonds, lending back to the very economies they borrow from. It's a worldwide game of hot potato, except there's no actual potato, only promises. Each nation holds another's I owe you paper. Each promise is backed by another promise, like players at a poker table, each borrowing chips from the next. And the only rule keeping the game alive is simple: no one stands up. But there's a fourth, and even stronger, force at play: the markets. Behind every government bond stands a vast web of institutions, central banks, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, and pension funds. They are the real judges of the credit world, deciding who borrows cheaply and who must pay dearly to survive. When they lose confidence, currencies crash, governments fall, and economies reshape overnight. Democracy decides who governs. Markets decide who survives. And the strongest players in this arena are central banks. They don't just manage debt, they create it. Every time the Fed or the European Central Bank buys a bond, new money is born. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every dollar in circulation is a unit of someone's debt. Money cannot exist without debt. Every banknote, coin, or digital dollar carries an invisible IOU. This cycle has survived for decades on one thing alone: trust. As long as investors believe governments will pay the interest, even if they never repay the principal, the machine keeps running. But what happens when that trust shakes? We saw it in 2010 when Greece could no longer pay its debts. Bondholders panicked. Yields skyrocketed. The IMF and ECB stepped in with bailouts on the condition of austerity. Taxes rose, spending was cut, unemployment soared. For an entire generation, the word rescue came to mean sacrifice. Argentina has defaulted repeatedly. Debt became a national curse. Sri Lanka ran out of foreign currency to pay its interest, leading to fuel shortages and political collapse. When the system breaks, creditors finally appear in the open: the IMF, rating agencies, anonymous bondholders. And yet after every collapse, the cycle restarts. New loans replace the old ones. Debt is restructured. The machine continues. The same balance sheet, just with new names. Because in the 21st century, debt isn't designed to be repaid. It's designed to be rolled over. Governments don't plan to pay their debts. Not now, not ever. That's not conspiracy. That's policy. Individuals must repay their loans. Governments renew them. Economists call it refinancing. Interest is the real product being sold, the rent of stability. And the global economy runs on that rent. Like a shark, it must keep swimming to breathe. The U.S. will never repay its $38 trillion. It will renew it forever. Japan has done this for decades. Its debt is now over 250% of GDP. Yet bond yields remain near zero. Investors don't expect repayment. They expect renewal. Why? Because government debt is the world's safest collateral. A U.S. Treasury bond isn't seen as debt. It's seen as an asset, the foundation of the global market. Pension funds hold it. Banks use it as collateral. Central banks treat it as money itself. The system is built on governments not repaying their debts, because if they did, the world would lose its most reliable financial instrument. Imagine if Washington tried to pay it all off. Banks and funds would lose their stable assets, the dollar supply would collapse, and deflation would spiral into depression. Paying off the debt would destroy the mechanism that keeps the economy alive. So governments do the opposite. They issue debt. Rhythmically. Endlessly. Debt is the heartbeat of capitalism, pulsing through every pension, mortgage, and market on Earth. That's why when politicians talk about balancing the budget or paying off national debt, they're selling an illusion. The goal isn't to end debt, it's to keep it sustainable, payable, and believable, because once trust disappears, the numbers no longer matter. Rates